Welcome to Those Who've Been Here Before, a Hastings College podcast made by Hastings College students about the people who've made this place so great. My name is Maddie Downey, and I'm your host. I'm partnered with Luke Liffengren, also a Hastings College student, who produces the program. In each episode, we will talk to and reminisce with a new guest, either an alumni of the college or someone who has impacted the college in a certain way. It is through these amazing people that the college has become what it is today, and so it's our objective to bring those voices out of the woodwork and remember them for what they are. Hastings College not only has a bright future, but a past as well, and we want to keep that memory alive. Our guests for this combination May and April episode are a couple who remember Hastings College as undergraduates and still live in town years later. We met at their house not far from campus, and when we arrived, a tea set was already arranged for us. It was the first time we had ever conducted 2 interviews at once, but we laughed the entire time. Their chemistry was addicting, their charm irresistible, and their memories were beyond humorous. Immediately, I felt love for the 2 lovebirds, Jane and Dwight Marsh, alumni of Hastings College. The 2 grew up in very different places, Jane in Denver, Colorado, and Dwight in Donovan, Nebraska, near Hastings. Dwight has very early memories of the college, far before his time as a student.
My first experience at Hastings College was roller skating on the back of McCormick Hall when I was about 6 years old.
Wow! The college was nothing back then, right?
There was more than McCormick. There was a football field too, and my early experience was my dad would take me to the football games, and being the Depression, he couldn't afford the probably 20 cents it took to get into the football field. So I remember watching my first football game at Hastings College was in a tree limb at just outside the fence, my dad boosting me up in there, and the 2 of us sitting in the tree to watch football games. and roller skating on the back platform behind McCormick Hall, which isn't there anymore. There had been the chemistry department and another department were in the basement behind McCormick. They took it out when they rebuilt the building after the fire because they had to restore it the way it was originally. Right. And anyway, we were out there roller skating, and suddenly, and I don't know why we were, this girl friend of mine who had gone 4 or 5 blocks from home, and we were out there skating, and all of a sudden this huge figure, who I think was probably Dr. Flea Hardy, was the head of the chemistry department, suddenly appeared at the door and kicked us off because he was trying to conduct his class underneath his roof where we were roller skating.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh.
By the time he was in school, he was a 3rd-generation Bronco. He said that going to school was just what people did in Hastings, so that's what he did too.
Why did I go to school? Because I could. There wasn't anything else to do. I could live at home, and I knew college headed you off to something eventually. And,
right.
And I had 2 siblings who were teachers, and I thought, well, I can do that. And so I kind of just drifted into it. And Hastings High had, in my class, there were 206 students, and 50-some of them attended Hastings College the following fall. Wow. And that was the pattern in those days. Hastings College was really founded for the city of Hastings.
Okay.
And now there hardly anybody from Hastings goes there, but that was the pattern in those days. It was an easy access to live at home, and you put 50 kids into a class of maybe 150. we kind of dominated the freshman class. But then the Korean War started and the draft started, and by second semester, most of that 50 were gone, or at least the guys by that time the draft was hitting, and I missed it, but it was that was a pattern of Hastings in those days. And we felt lucky to have the school here.
Yeah, no kidding. It's awesome that it was just there for you guys to go
right. And the tuition was $8 an hour.
It's a little bit more nowadays. Just saying.
Dwight started off as a French major, but made the switch to English not long after starting college. It was in French class that he and Jane met. Jane was originally from Denver, but moved to Hastings to attend school there.
My dad was a Presbyterian minister, and the first time I realized that I was aware of Hastings College, we had posters they were building the beautiful new Calvin H. French Memorial Chapel at Hastings College, and people would come and they'd want us to give money to Hastings College to build this beautiful new chapel. And my dad, and Hastings was a synod college for Colorado, Nebraska, and Wyoming. And so I came. My brothers and sisters didn't want to, but I did. And so I arrived in the summer in 1951, the fall of 1951, and I didn't meet Dwight for the first year. I lived in Alex Hall. See, all of the buildings are now gone. Or there's a plaque. I don't know, maybe there's even a plaque there. It's on 9th Street. Yeah, you walk past it if you're going over to Bellevue House.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, anyway, I lived there, and I didn't meet him till our sophomore year. We took French together.
Oh.
And
I was a French major. When I first went there.
And I thought he was so smart because he would make comments in French, Oh, I just thought he was the smartest thing. But we both were on the collegiate staff. Okay, yeah. And so that's where we kind of hung out. I don't think we ever dated. I was thinking though, I tell you about one of our first dates. Mm-hmm. He could borrow his dad's car on occasion. Nobody had any money. So he asked me to go out to this place where they had coffee, this drive-in. It was out there kind of by, what's out there on Highway 6, out by the baseball field,
It's not there anymore.
No, not there. Nothing is there that was there. And so we pulled up, he had a dime. And we pulled up and ordered the coffee, and then he looked up and found out that they'd raised it to
7 cents a cup instead of a nickel.
And so we said, well, let's just leave. So we left. And so we said, well, we'll just go over to Bellevue House where it was still a nickel. And so while we're walking across the parking lot, he dropped this time fell out. So we went in and just sat and talked to people. Boy, I knew I'd get rich sticking with this guy.
Dropping all your money everywhere.
Right. And,
That's hilarious.
But we had, and I tell people things have changed. And for a while there, it was pursue your passion at Hastings College. And I tell them if we'd pursued our passion, we'd been expelled.
They worked on the Collegian together then, and they laughed when telling me about their lack of journalism integrity while doing it.
But we actually got to know each other, not so much in French class as in working on the Collegian together. And eventually both of us edited it at different times.
That's great.
I edited it one year, and the following year she did.
And our standard of journalism wasn't the very highest. Because
we didn't even have a supervisor.
Oh, so you're just kind of like going off.
Except they get mad at the Tribune if they printed it for us, and sometimes they get mad if they thought
our semesters were 18 weeks long, and we were expected to have an issue every week.
Yeah, and so we get real desperate, and so we would make up quotes and just attribute them to people, and then we'd say
to our friends.
To our friends, they say, and so the thing was, read the Collegian and find out what you're saying.
my God.
Well, what are you going to do when you're desperate? You got a deadline, and so he would want.
So you should tell them that now.
Yeah.
They would absolutely flip out.
And I had never had a journalism class in my life.
Why did you guys want to do the community?
Well, I took journalism.
When I became an English major, one of my English teachers said I should start writing for the Collegian, so I started writing a column, and the woman who had been editing it was giving it up, and I had written for it for a year and worked and learned a lot, about working in the office and everything, and so I put my name in, and I got it. It was the only one I think put in for it. Only person dumb enough to take it off. They paid the editor $250. No, that's not right in the figure, but it was something like that. It was, which you had to share with the whole staff.
Oh.
And that was a semester. The 250 was a semester. And so really you weren't getting paid for it. And I think.
At that time at Hastings College, church was required. Jane and Dwight remember how strict the college was about students attending church 3 times a week.
I had to go to chapel and fill out this little card that says, I fulfilled the requirement by attending this particular church. And they decided that statistically, if everybody who said they went to First Presbyterian Church had been there would have been standing room only, because, people lied,
Oh, God.
When they were attending Hastings, they knew many of the people who now have buildings named after them. Altman was Jane's Spanish teacher. They remember Fuhrer and Weir, even Hazelrig, the man who the HSU was named after.
He was very famous.
Yeah,
I don't know what he...
Hazelrig family lived on Lexington between 9th Street and 7th Street.
And they were very rich. I don't know what they did, but they made money. And so, but we would always say, we couldn't remember whether he was Jerry Hazelrig or Hazel Jerry Rig. And so we had no respect. We had no respect, But now he's a building. So
the way I knew him is he was in my brother's scout troop. That's the only way I knew him.
See, we got connections.
Yeah,
Jane also remembers living in a resident hall that no longer exists, Alex Hall. Then, dorm life was far different than it is today. Jane recalls the strict curfew hours and being on telephone duty. She also remembers the communal showers in the hall.
Oh yeah, we had just one big one. And at first I thought, I can't do this. I was, little preacher's kid from Denver. Oh, I can't possibly do this. But after a while, you got so used to it that you felt lonesome if you were there all by yourself. But then we'd put our towels over the thing, and the thing to do would be to go and grab everybody's towel and run off with them. Girls would do that,
Oh my gosh.
The Alex Hall girls were rivals with the girls who lived in Taylor. It cost more to live in Taylor then, and all of the Alex girls made fun of them for it. Jane remembers the song the Alex girls used to sing in pride of their building.
Oh, when an Alex girl walks down the street, she looks 100 per from head to feet. She's got a smile away, a winning way. And when you see her, boys, you'll recognize her, and you'll say, now there's a girl I'd like to know. She's got that Alex spirit, pep and go. And just to look at her is quite a treat. She's so neat, she's so sweet, an Alex girl. But when a Taylor girl walks down the street, oh boy, she looks a mess from head to feet. She's got a sneer, a jeer, a crummy way. And when you see her, boys, you'll recognize her, and you'll say, now there's a girl I'd hate to know. She's got that Taylor spirit and B.O. And just to look at her, She's such a mess, a hell of a mess. We had to say heck. A Taylor girl.
The two of them graduated and then married in 1955.
We got married in Denver, and then I had to go teach. I didn't have much of a honeymoon because I had to teach the following Monday.
Oh,
And
geez.
I got married on Friday, so.
Oh, so you had the weekend.
Yeah, right, so it was not a glamorous getaway.
And as we were exiting Denver, we ran across my parents and my sister. And my sister was upset that they were going to spend another night on the road visiting relatives. And she needed to get back to her job too. And so on our honeymoon, we took my sister to Hastings too.
Wow.
It was real romantic.
No kidding. That's a romance novel right there, man.
Yeah, right.
That's so funny. So then you went straight into working. You did too. You worked. Did you work right out of the college?
No, I went to graduate school
went to graduate
and leached off of my wife's labor
For a year, and then
So I went to grad school. I was a student assistant, not student. What do they call it?
student assistant,
Some sort of
teaching assistant.
grading papers for other teachers. Was what it was, and that's how I paid my first year, and then the second year, then I was subsidized by Jane until they were short of a teacher, and so I got 2 classes. That was my first teaching experience. Was with 2 classes of students.
And then I got pregnant, and that was not a good thing to do. I mean,
Well, that was after we left Nebraska.
yeah, this is when we were in Indiana.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we were in India. He went to graduate school in Indiana, and he was okay.
They
Yeah.
didn't even have a doctor's program at Nebraska when I first went in. They only had a master's in English.
Okay.
They had one at one time, but they weren't accepting graduate school students until I was making plans and was going off to Indiana, and then they decided they were starting a graduate program at Nebraska in English.
Okay.
And but I went to Indiana with a teaching assistant, they call it, and you taught 2 classes and took a half program, which takes forever, of course. And meanwhile, we had a second baby on the way, and my first job I got was back in Lincoln at Nebraska Wesleyan, my first full-time job. So there I was in Lincoln, and they were doing a graduate program there then, so I transferred from Indiana to Lincoln and finished there then.
While Dwight was working on his graduate degree, Jane was also teaching and raising their growing family. They remember the early parts of their marriage when living spaces weren't quite up to par. There was a point where they lived in northern Iowa, and Jane doesn't remember it fondly.
Previous years.
I was so glad to come back. You know, there were 20 consecutive days when the temperature did not get up to 0. And I was going crazy. I had these little kids, and when he got the job offer, yes, you're going to take it, yes, we're going back to Hastings.
The housing was really terrible there, and we lived in this house which the nails in the floorboards, in the wall boards, you know, the mop boards, the nails would gather ice on them inside.
It was the most miserable.
Is it legal to live there?
Probably not, you know. Oh, it was terrible, but we were so glad to come back to Hastings.
At Hastings College, Dwight taught English literature, composition, and poetry classes. Jane also worked as a teacher in town, although she was frequently moved around while working in the special ed program. Together, they raised a family of 4 children, 2 daughters and 2 sons. I knew Dwight personally before our interview because he continued to teach the poetry class as an adjunct professor until a year ago, and I was in one of his classes. He would walk to school every day from their house in town. Since their retirement, Jane and Dwight still keep active. Dwight goes swimming every morning and keeps the garden at their house lush. He also writes poetry and was recently published in a Plain Songs poetry issue, a publication he used to edit himself. Jane works hard at her church, continuing her passion for teaching.
I taught special ed for 27 years. And so right now at our church we have just started a special needs Bible school.
Oh, wow.
For it's alongside and it's ecumenical. We're trying to get kids from, and if their church offers a program, then we don't care. But we've been doing it for a couple of years, and we get a good response, and it's so good for the non-handicapped kids too, because they really get a feeling of compassion. So I've been doing that. I teach a preschool class Wednesday night live at our church, little kids, and that's fun.
As active and longtime members of the Hastings community, we are lucky to have Jane and Dwight Marsh around. They have a long-time loyalty to the college and to the city, and they were a hoot to sit down and talk to. Thank you for listening. I'm Maddie Downey, and we'll see you around on Those Who've Been Here Before.